الحمد لله نحمده سبحانه ونستعين به ونسترشده ونعوذ به من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين وعلى من تبعهم وعمل بعملهم واستنى بسنتهم إلى يوم الدين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. أما بعد. All praise and thanks and gratitude be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless our Prophet and Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We seek refuge in Allah from the evils of our own selves and from the wrongs of our deeds. Whoever is guided by Allah will never go astray, and whoever goes astray can only be guided by Allah. I bear witness that there is no God worthy of worship except Allah, alone without partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is Allah's messenger, prophet, and servant. I remind myself and I remind you to follow the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and to apply them to your daily lives. My dear brothers and sisters, inshallah, today I want to talk about a topic that is very painful to talk about, because I really don't think that we should reach the level of having to discuss this matter. But I can tell you, as I'm sure many of you are already aware, the problem that I'm going to discuss today is rampant in the Muslim world and in Muslim communities and in Muslim families specifically. And it is a shame, because that should not be the case, nor was it the case in the past. It is only in recent times that Muslim families have engaged in an amazing, mind-boggling, and very disturbing transgression. And the topic I want to discuss specifically is the issue of inheritance. Because I will tell you that almost every week I hear a story, or someone tells me a story, or asks my opinion, and not just me, many others who are active, and the issue has to do with inheritance. And families fighting with each other about inheritance, one person trying to deprive another of their fair share, and a multitude of other problems, all of which constitute very serious transgressions. The typical scenario is that a father who has several children dies, leaves behind a home, maybe some money or some gold, and the children, who are brothers and sisters and who love one another, and they were perfectly fine before the death of the father. But then, after the father died, they have to distribute the inheritance. And they begin to fight, because typically one of the brothers wants to deprive the sisters of their fair share. That's the typical scenario. It's not the other way around. I rarely see the sisters trying to deprive the brother. Usually it's the brothers depriving the sisters, or the brothers trying to deprive each other. This happens a lot. And there are so many scenarios and so many justifications that they come up with to kind of make themselves feel comfortable that they're doing the right thing. Oh, if my sister takes her share, her husband is going to take it, and he's not part of the family. Subhanallah. Or, oh, my brother, he lives in America. He's making a lot of money. He doesn't need it. I'm here, whatever X country you can fill in the blank, whatever country you want. That happens in all Muslim countries. Oh, here I am struggling. I don't make that much. I need it more than him. Or they delay. Oh, I'll give him his fair share. In the meantime, the property is being rented and the income is coming and that person is gobbling up that money. And when we sell it, I'll give you your fair share. He's making thousands and thousands every year. And when we sell it, I'll give you. But he never gives the share of the rent. This happens a lot. There's so many stories I can tell you. Unbelievable. Or they come and they make the sister sign a paper. And then they change, after she signs, they modify the content of the paper. And suddenly she owes nothing. Oh, not happy, go to court. It's all legitimate, you signed over to me. She cannot do anything. This happens a lot. So many stories that it's so hard to even imagine that a Muslim's mind could go in that direction. It's so mind-boggling. And you know why it's mind-boggling? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran talks about the inheritance in tremendous detail. If you look, for example, at the salat that we do, of course, there are multiple orders in the Quran to perform salat, but the details are not there. How you should do ruku', how you should do sujood, what you say in each one. Those details are not in the Quran. We learned them from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Zakah is required and it's in the Quran, but the details are not there. The details we learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Hajj is in the Quran, but the details we learned from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Passed down from generation to generation. From Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to the next generation, to the next generation, all the way to us. But with inheritance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was extremely detailed and specific. Extremely detailed. Defining the proportions that each person will get. This person gets a third, that person gets an eighth. That means it's a mathematical formula. In fact, many of you may not know this, but the science of algebra, of course, was invented by Muslims. And algebra is really an Arabic word, algebra. But it was invented for the purpose of solving inheritance problems. That's why they came up with it. They came up with algebra because they had to figure out a formula that matches the instructions in the Quran to distribute inheritance. So it's so specific and so detailed, it's mathematical in nature. So it's not an issue of controversy. It's clearly outlined. And subhanAllah, the elegance of the Quran, the beauty of the Quran, all of it is in only 3 ayat. Can you imagine how big of a topic this is? How it affects every family. There is nobody who escapes the issue of inheritance at some point in their life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the tremendous detail in only 3 ayat in the Quran. And they are all in Surah An-Nisa. 2 of them are early on in Surah An-Nisa, and the last one is at the end of Surah An-Nisa. That's it. 3 ayat. That's all it is. But there's something in these 3 ayat that is common. They all, you know how ayat in the Quran, they go through a lot of detail, and then at the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you a reminder. Gives you a reminder. Allah is all-knowing. Allah is all-compassionate. Allah is most merciful. So He gives you that reminder of Him. And all 3 ayat have a reminder at the end. And it's the same reminder. I'm going to read to you what those reminders are. In the first ayah, I'm not going to read the entire ayah because it's long. And I don't want to delve into the details of the mathematical formula. That's not the purpose of the khutbah. But the ayah begins with يُوصِيكُمُ اللَّهُ فِي أَوْلَادِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you instructions on how your children should receive the inheritance. And then at the end of the ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. Allah is indeed the most knowing, the most wise. This issue of knowing, aliman, it will repeat itself in each ayah of inheritance. Allah knows. He's kind of warning us. Don't deviate, because I know what you're doing. And I know what you're supposed to do. I told you what you're supposed to do. And I know what you're doing. إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا حَكِيمًا. In the next ayah, it ends with وَصِيَّةً مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ عَلِيمٌ حَلِيمٌ. It is an instruction from Allah, and Allah is most knowing, most compassionate. He knows. Again, He's reminding us. In the last ayah, in Surah An-Nisa, again, the same thing. وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ. And Allah is indeed knowledgeable of everything. A reminder again, He knows what we do with inheritance. You can't escape. You can hide, but you can't run. He will find you, and He will know exactly what you did. Don't try to escape. After Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the formula for how to distribute the inheritance, He gives us a stern warning. But, of course, the elegance of the Quran appears again. He doesn't start out with the warning. First, He tells us that if we follow His instructions, the reward will be tremendous. And if we disobey His instructions, then there will be punishment. I'm going to read to you those ayat because there is beauty in them. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, من بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, تلك حدود الله ومن يطع الله ورسوله يدخله جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها وذلك الفوز العظيم. These are the limits set by Allah. So this is the first ayah that comes after the formula. He says these are the limits set by Allah. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger will be admitted by Him to paradise, under which rivers flow. He will abide in it eternally. And that is the greatest achievement. You see the beauty, the amazing reward just for following the rules of inheritance. Next ayah tells us what the punishment is. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ومن يعص الله ورسوله ويتعد حدوده يدخله نارا خالدا فيها وله عذاب مهين. And whoever disobeys Allah and His Messenger and transgresses His limits, He will put him into the hellfire to abide in it eternally. Eternally means you go in, you don't come out. خالدا فيها, he's done. He's there forever. He's not coming out. That's how serious this matter is. And he will have a humiliating punishment. So on top of being thrown into the hellfire, on top of staying in it forever, he will have a humiliating punishment. That's what happens if you don't follow the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the distribution of inheritance. It is a critical matter. It is a serious matter. And it's a shame that we don't take it so seriously. Part of the problem with transgressing upon the recipients of the inheritance is that you are essentially destroying the family relations. Because people get upset. When they don't get what's rightfully theirs, they feel that they are victims of transgression. And they don't want to talk to you anymore. And this happens in families. Brothers and sisters stop talking to each other. Brothers don't talk to each other for years because of the issue of inheritance. When you go back to it, you find that's the real reason. That's the problem. They feel that someone took advantage of them. Someone deprived them of what's rightfully theirs. The Prophet ﷺ in a beautiful hadith said, لا يدخل الجنة قاطع رحم. A man who cuts off his relations with his family members will never enter paradise. That's it. And that goes along with the warning from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that if you transgress the limits, you will enter the hellfire. And the Prophet is telling us the same thing. You won't enter paradise. There's only one other place to go, and that's the hellfire. Subhanallah. There are so many excuses that people come up with to justify depriving relatives of inheritance. Some of them are truly amazing. But I want to share some of them with you. I already told you a few, some of the ones that I hear commonly. Oh, my sister is, she's married to another man, he's not part of the family. He's your sister's husband. What do you mean he's not part of the family? As soon as he married her, he became part of the family. But they don't think that way because he has a different last name. No, he's not part of the family. And we don't want the wealth of our father to go to him, because if we give our sister, she's going to give it to her husband and he's going to spend it or whatever. He'll give it to his children. So now it will go to his family and we will lose it. Suddenly, the person thinks they know more than Allah. How could that be? How can you even put yourself in that position to challenge the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of such a thought? Another thought I've heard, oh, my sister, she's a woman, she doesn't know how to manage money. I've heard that so many times. Again, ridiculous. Most men don't know how to manage money. In fact, I would venture to say that women know how to manage money a lot better than men do. A lot better than men do. Sometimes there is a problem, and that is the father, before he died, during his lifetime, he favored one son. And that son got more, but knew more. He knew what the father really owned. And the rest of the siblings didn't. So they now are dependent on that one brother to distribute properly. But of course he knows they don't know, so he cheats them. Oh, this is mine. My father gave it to me. Before he died, he said, this is for you. So therefore it's not part of the inheritance, right? Because he gave it in his lifetime. He said, no, my father told me the factory is mine. He gave it to me. It's not part of it. And he deprives them by playing these little games. I know and you don't know. One time, I want to share with you a story about this diversion, But a man by the name of Nu'man ibn Bashir. Nu'man ibn Bashir was a Sahabi. And he narrates a story about his father. He said that my mother asked my father to give me some money. So he was young, he was a young child. So the mother wanted to allocate some of the father's wealth to Nu'man. So she asked the father to allocate the money to him. So he thought that was a great idea, and he wanted to allocate some of the property to his son. But the mother said, we want this to be blessed. So we want you to go to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and have him be the witness. Right? They're going to write a document that this now is for this son. And we want Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to witness that the transfer of property is happening. So the father went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he took the young child with him. And he told him, Ya Rasulullah, the mother of this child, my wife, she wants me to give him a piece of property. No, just give it to him as a gift. And we want you to bless it. We want you to witness it. So we're coming here for you to affirm and validate what we are doing. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam looked at the father and he said, do you have other children? Simple question. Do you have other children? And he said, yes, I have other children. He said, did you allocate to them the same as you allocated to him? He said, no, this is only for him. Rasulullah ﷺ said, I will not witness something that is a transgression. لا أشهد على جور. I won't witness something that is a transgression. Leave me out of it. And he refused to witness this transaction. That's how serious this matter can become. Be careful. A lot of people do that. They have a favorite son or a favorite daughter and they allocate during their lifetime more money to that person. And then after the death, the son or daughter says, oh, my dad gave this to me. It's not part of the inheritance, this is separate. And deprive people. Be careful. Do not do that. Of course, you're free to do whatever you want with your money. But don't transgress against other people. That you are not free to do. Allah is watching. Be careful. Back to some of the reasons that people get into trouble. A lot of people hide their wealth. So they don't necessarily, people, even their own families, their wives and their children, they may not know what they have and what they don't have. But usually there's one person who knows. And that person, if they're not trustworthy, can really mess it up. They can start playing favorites. So there may be someone who is kind of like a trustee, someone who's in charge of distributing that wealth. And they know the true wealth. And they might start playing games, not being transparent. Oh, give him a little more, he doesn't need it. Oh, he lives in America, he's making money is coming, falling from the sky. The trees have money instead of leaves. He doesn't need it. We are here in the country, we're barely making it. He doesn't need this. Each person gets their fair share. Whether they are rich or poor, it doesn't matter. If your sister is married to the king, and she has a share, she gets her share. It doesn't matter how rich her husband is, or what he does for a living, or where they live, their physical geography, where they're located, is totally and completely irrelevant. Totally and completely irrelevant. Whether you like the person or not is irrelevant. Oh, I don't like my sister. She hates my wife, so we never get along. There's problems, so I don't want to give her. I'm going to hide the money from her. That happens a lot. You'd be surprised and shocked. I want to share with you a story that happened a few hundred years ago. And it's an interesting story because it demonstrates that people in the past, Muslims in the past, did not engage in this kind of transgression that I'm talking about. There was a man who was a merchant in Baghdad. Baghdad is the capital of Iraq at the time. And he bought and sold clothes. He was a merchant, he had a store, that was his job. And he was married and he had 7 children. And one day, a young woman walks into his store to buy some clothes. And when he saw her, he liked her. And he wanted to marry her. So he decided and he asked for her name and who her father is. And he decided to marry this woman. And this woman actually owned a home. She actually had a home of her own. But he went and he asked for her hand in marriage. He told her, I'm already married, you will be the second wife. And he asked for her hand in marriage and she agreed. And she married him. But he did not tell his first wife. So he married her secretly. And he used to give his first wife excuses as to why certain days of the week he wouldn't sleep at home. Oh, my friend wants to go out hunting, or we want to do this. So he always had an excuse. And this went on for about a year. And after a year, the first wife, who has the 7 children, got a little suspicious. What's going on with this guy? 2 times a week, he's sleeping outside of the house. Something's not right. So she had a servant, a maid, who was very smart. She told her, I want you to follow him. Cover yourself so he won't identify you, and I want you to see what he's doing. Where is he going in the middle of the night? So this maid covered herself and she started following the merchant to find out where he's going, and she would see him go into a house, and stay there all night. And then in the morning he would come out and go back to his store. So she told her, he's going into a house. I don't know who it is. She said, I want you to find out who lives in that house and why is he going there. So this maid went and tried to find out, and she was told, yeah, this is a woman, lives here. And she's married to this merchant. She's his second wife. SubhanAllah. The maid went back to the first wife, the mother of the children, and said, your husband is married to somebody, he didn't tell you, but he's married to another woman, and that's who he's going and spending the night with. She said, okay, that's fine, don't tell him anything. Don't tell him that I know. Leave it the way it is. A few days later, he died. Suddenly, just dropped dead. So, the first wife, of course, she had access to all of his money because he kept it at home or in the store. So, now they had to distribute his inheritance. And he had 7 children. So, most of the money is going to go to the children. So, they distributed according to the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the wife was left with 1,000 dinar. 1,000 dinar. So she said, I'm going to keep 500 for me, and I'm going to send the 500 to the other wife. Even though she's not supposed to know, but because she knew, she did not want to cheat her out of her fair share. So she put the 500 dinar in a bag and she gave it to the maid, and she said, go to her and tell her, this is your portion of his inheritance. He was your husband too. This is your portion. That's the honesty. That's people who read the Quran and live it and are afraid of violating the limits of Allah. So this maid took the 500 and she knocked on the door of the second wife. And she said, this is your portion of his inheritance. That woman, the second wife, told her, no, you take it back. I'm not entitled to any inheritance. And she said, why? You were his wife. This is your share. She said, 2 days ago, he divorced me. And I'm no longer his wife. So I'm not entitled to any inheritance. So she also was honest and did not transgress the limits of Allah. You see, that's what we need to return to. That's what we need to return to. I know a lot of you don't like the story of a man marrying another woman. All that. That's a whole other khutbah. One day we'll talk about that. But that's not the point. The point is the honesty of these 2 women. The level of their belief, their adherence to the instruction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, their sincerity. It's amazing. I wish we had it today. I wish we had 1/10 of it today. Not even the whole thing. We'll take 1/10. It would be much better than the dismal state that we are currently in. I want to share with you another story of a woman who was married to a man. And her husband was out working, and while he was working, she was preparing some food in the house. And specifically, she was preparing some dough. So she was trying to bake some things. So she was preparing the dough. And you have to get the flour and whatever you need to make the dough. So she's making it, and they used to do it with their hand. They didn't have equipment. So she was doing it with her hand. And while she's preparing the dough, someone knocks on her door and said, "Your husband just died. Your husband, in his work, he just died. He just passed away." So she started crying. Her husband died. And then she stopped making the dough. Right there. She immediately stopped. And her children asked her, "Why did you stop?" She said, "This is not ours anymore. There is a portion of it which we have to share with those that Allah commanded us to share with." I said, "She stopped. Even the dough, it's food. It's worth nothing, $5. But still, she stopped. She said, "Some of this dough is no longer just ours. We have to share it." That's the level of awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the level of being conscientious of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded us to do. And that's the level we need to reach. And I will tell you, you can enact 100 laws. If it doesn't come from the heart, it's not going to work. People find ways around laws all the time. They're all experts with big degrees. All they do is find ways to get around the law. That's what they do. That's their job. Okay, this is a law. How are we going to circumvent it? They find another law. They find some way, some loophole. There are people who do that for a living. That's what they do. They are experts. But you cannot get around the law of Allah. You can't. You can try. But Allah knows. He tells you in each ayah, He says that He is the most knowledgeable. He knows precisely and exactly what you're doing at any time, at any moment. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله. الحمد لله ولي الصالحين وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, my dear brothers and sisters, the reason I highlight this issue, and you might think this isn't a big deal, but it is a big deal because it affects most Muslim families and it is rampant. So this isn't an unusual or aberrant circumstance. And I'm sure that in each and every one of you, if you go into your families and check, you will find that this is a problem in one way or another. Sometimes it's a small manifestation, sometimes it's a big manifestation. But nevertheless, it is a common problem. Almost expected. People have come to expect it. Okay, I won't get my fair share. I'll get a little up. I'll be happy with this, I'll be happy with that. Or there are delays. People just sit on the money for years, and nobody gets their fair share. All of that is not allowed and not proper. We have to follow the instructions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to do it promptly and fairly and transparently and honestly. We cannot deprive others. We cannot transgress. Because if we do, the punishment is severe. But if we do follow the instructions of Allah, the reward is amazing. It goes both ways. You do it right, you get rewarded. You do it poorly, you get punished. Simple as that. As simple as that. Also, know that any money that you get that's not legitimately yours, there will be no barakah in it. There will be no blessing. Somehow that money will get lost. You might get sick. Your son will get sick. You have to spend this for that treatment and this treatment. You might have a car accident and need a new car, and your insurance won't pay, and somehow the money will be gone. There will be no, it won't grow. It won't grow the way money should grow. No, it'll be lost. So you might be happy for a moment that you got a little bit more, but that happiness is very short-sighted. It won't last. It won't last. But very few people see the lesson. Even though they lose the money, they don't quite get it. And the second time they'll do the same thing. And they'll keep doing it and doing it. Because greed comes over the heart and it squeezes it and it takes it over. And that's the tragedy. Our hearts have to be clean. And if they're not, there's no way around it. We will lose. Before we make the dua, I've been requested by some of the brothers, and I really feel this is important, to talk a little bit about a different topic. And I'm just going to spend 1 or 2 minutes. I want to discuss our brothers, our Muslim brothers in China, the Uyghur Muslims. They are suffering tremendously. The Chinese government has said that Islam is a disease that needs to be cured. I'm telling you verbatim what they said. That's what they said. Islam is a disease that needs to be cured. And they are rounding up Muslims in China and putting them in camps. They call them camps, they're really prisons, where they are subjected to torture, mind washing. They're trying all kinds of crazy things. And many of them die in the prison. And not only do they take them and put them in the prison, they then bring a non-Muslim Chinese to live in their house. Can you imagine? Forcibly goes in and lives in their house. During the month of Ramadan, Muslims who work for the government are forced to eat and drink. Not only do they force them to drink, they force them to drink alcohol and eat pork. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. It's amazing. So many atrocities are being committed against our brothers in China. And wallahi, they are sincere brothers who have a long history. These are not Muslims who just appeared last week. They have a long history that dates back centuries. And they are being persecuted. And the Muslim world is unfortunately oblivious to the reality that they are facing. So at a minimum, make a dua for them. I ask Allah to help them. I ask Allah to give them relief. I ask Allah to enable us to help them. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve them of their calamity. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to open their masajid again. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable them to pray jama'ah again. I ask Allah to enable them to fast the next Ramadan without difficulty or trouble. Let us make dua. Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, wa afina fi man afayt, wa tawallana fi man tawallayt, wa barik lana fi ma a'tayt, wa qina wasrif anna sharra ma qadayt, fa innaka taqdi bil haqqi wa la yuqda alayk, wa innahu la yadhillu man walayt, wa la ya'uzzu man adayt, tabarakta rabbana wa ta'alayt, laka alhamdu ala ma qadayt, نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. اللهم اهدنا لصالح الأعمال لا يهدي لصالحها إلا أنت. اللهم اهدنا لأحسن الأخلاق لا يهدي لأحسنها إلا أنت. اللهم أصلح لنا ديننا الذي هو عصمة أمرنا، وأصلح لنا دنيانا التي فيها معاشنا، وأصلح لنا آخرتنا التي إليها مردنا. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك، وبطاعتك عن معصيتك، وبفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك أعل كلمتي الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وأعز المسلمين برحمتك وقدرتك يا أرحم الراحمين. إنك يا ربنا على ما تشاء قدير وبالإجابة جدير. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.